Ethics and logic are two of the more simple branches of philosophy, and as a result, they're not something that is as easy to talk about because, well, there's not as much to talk about. Ethics especially is a rather barren subject because while there are a million ways you can talk about ethics, they all boil down to about the same thing. Ethics is simply the discussion of what is right and wrong, and why things are right and wrong. And the different approaches can be interesting at times, but it depends on the specific approach you're using. For example, if you are a particularly religious individual, you can have a very heated discussion with somebody who isn't about what is right and wrong based on your religion and their non-religion. And you'll notice that while most philosophy is rather subjective, ethics is even more so. Ethics is simply morality, no more, no less. Whatever moral code you have is your ethical philosophy, and as a result, it's almost entirely subjective. There is no way to really examine ethics, study it completely. It's why it's one of the more underwhelming areas of philosophy. That being said, when you combine ethics with some of the other major fields of study in philosophy, such as epistemology, like I discussed last time, it can be pretty interesting. One particular method of research that I am very interested in is epistemic morality. Basically, epistemic morality looks at the justification people have for their individual ethical beliefs. For example, I believe that it is wrong to murder someone. Not a particularly controversial statement to make, but what is my justification for that? Why do I believe it is wrong to murder people? Is it just a societal thing that has been implanted in me, or is there some innate problem with murder? And while you won't find too many people arguing that murder is okay or ethical, you will have trouble identifying your justification for a lot of ethical problems, at least in an epistemic sense. And on the other side, you'll have trouble identifying your epistemological justification for doing positive things. For example, helping a homeless person. What is your justification for doing that? Is it because you feel good about doing it, or is it because it is the right thing to do? An ethical person will say it's the right thing to do, because that is meant to be your justification, but why is it the right thing to do? That is the question that needs answering. But notice something here. We've jumped into the epistemological side of ethics. I had to bring in an entirely different field of philosophy in order to make ethics interesting, or even expand my thoughts on ethics in general. Which is why I can't do a full video on ethics. It's just too simple, too bland to do a full-fledged intro on that would take up a good 5 to 10 minutes. And it is with that spirit that I move on to the other rather simple side of philosophy, logic. We all know what the common man's logic is. We've all seen basic logical thinking, but logic does actually push beyond that. Basic logic examines the truth of individual statements and examines whether or not something could be true or false. Contingent statements, logically true statements that cannot ever be false, those kinds of things. However, there's way more to logic than that. It actually can become its own math. I'll only cover this briefly because nobody likes math. But basically, you can symbolize individual statements, plug them into formulas, and see how the truth tables come out as a result of that. It's called symbolic logic. By doing this, you can measure the equivalency of two basic statements. Even if they are worded and sound different, you can figure out if they mean the same thing by plugging them into symbols and seeing if you can work the math around to make them equivalent. And there's a lot more similar things you can do. You can compare statements based on their logical symbols to see just how similar they are, if there are any similarities, or if there are actually contradictions of each other based on the way they are symbolized. Essentially, you can analyze language in a limited sense, but still, there's an analysis of different statements that people make. For example, the debate was recently, the first presidential debate of 2016. I know I'm dating myself here, but bear with me. Take one of Trump's favorite things to say last night. I never said that. You can analyze the different possibilities here, whether or not it's true in certain situations, whether or not it's false in certain situations, simply by symbolizing it. The first thing you need to do is assign a variable to the statement, the positive statement. In this case, we'll give the statement, he said that, the variable s. In order to symbolize, I never said that, or, in essence, I did not say that, you need to put a little not symbol in front of the s. I'll put what this looks like on the screen for you guys. So at this point, we have ourselves our statement, not s, which is our symbolic version. So if s is true, the statement will be false. And if S is false, then the statement will be true. The not negates the truth value of the positive statement. So when Trump says something like, "I did not say that," he's basically putting a not in front of the statement, "I said that," negating its truth value. And certain statements are compound statements, so they'll need more than one symbol. But we won't get into that. That's a little more complex than I really want to talk about. But that's just a basic intro to logic, with a little bit of symbolic logic thrown in there for you guys. And that'll pretty much wrap things up for today. Like and favorite if you enjoyed, comment any questions you might have, and I'll see you in my next video. Leave any suggestions if you have any philosophical concepts you want me to cover, and yeah, I'll see you next time.